Favored by the early Christians, most of Plato's writings still survive. Yet, despite his renown, he is still often misunderstood or misrepresented. Avoiding any overall analysis or categorization, in this video you may learn details about one of Plato's dialogues. Plato's Phaedrus, on good and bad love. At the beginning it is made clear that Socrates and Phaedrus are outside of the city, in the countryside. Also, it appears that their relationship is somewhat amorous, although they might merely be platonic friends. There are several jokes as the philosopher convinces his partner to read, or recite, what some famed orator has written about love. Yes, love is the initial theme of this dialogue. However, I must make clear, the dialogue, being very long, deals with other subjects. Yet I will not be describing the whole of it. Most of the rest of the dialogue seemed rather uninteresting to me, and thus I will focus on the discussion regarding the nature of love. From the onset, a distinction is drawn between what are termed the lover and the non-lover. Since to my mind this translation is questionable, know that the term lover means a person who is not only desiring, but arguably obsessed, over the one who is loved. The term non-lover, on the other hand, means a person that is welcoming and perhaps desiring, but not in a very strong manner, someone that is indifferent or not obsessed. Phaedrus initially argues that the non-lover is better than the lover as the latter suffers, and makes his love suffer for his obsession. The non-lover, on the other hand, does not neglect the other aspects of life for the sake of his love. In fact, curiously, it is said that the lover
will prefer any future love to his present, and will injure his old love at the pleasure of the new.
Meaning, since the lover is more interested in the pleasure of love, rather than duty or morality, therefore the lover should never be trusted, even by the one he loves. After all, whom a lover loves may change. The point is made that the lover is essentially crazy, prone to envy. Likewise, that the non-lovers are more numerous, therefore, somehow, safer. I found remarkable the claim that the lover
is afraid of anybody's influence who has any other advantage over himself.
Therefore, he will keep his love shut in from the world. This is perhaps the most valuable insight of this play. To be clear, let me say that keeping a partner shut in is the most common, typical manifestation of sexism and cause of the inequities between lovers, between men and women. Lastly, the point is made that it is wisest to love him who does not need one's love. To love an independent and autonomous person. Yet, that is exactly what the lover does not want. The lover wishes a love that needs him, as thus he may feel secure in his obsession. In his weak obsession, again, the translation of the concepts is an issue. Nonetheless, once again, this is undeniably what most often occurs in unequal relationships. There is a discussion over the quality of the prose of what Phaedrus has read. Skipping ahead, the philosopher is obliged to provide his own account on the subject of lovers and non-lovers. Initially, he finds it impossible to argue against what has been said, thus he simply adds to it. The philosopher starts by arguing that there are two basic forms of amorous desires.
One is the natural desire of pleasure, the other is an acquired opinion which aspires after the best, and these are sometimes in harmony and then again at war.
I should make clear that the latter type of desire amounts to reason. The desire to do what has been concluded as correct or best. My notes originally contain an extensive digression on the relationship between reason and will. For brevity's sake, let me say that the separation of reason and desire is arguably fictitious. They are in reality one and the same thing. Reason is simply agreeable or non-shameful motivations, while desire often denotes unwanted motivations. Either way, returning to the dialogue, Socrates takes the classical view wherein a desire for pleasure or happiness overcomes a desire for reason. It is the emotion most capable of doing so. As may be imagined, the topic soon thereafter veers tangential to a discussion on free will. As Goethe notices, nothing makes free will more questionable than love. The point is made once again that the lover, with a diseased mind, incapable of reason, only finds agreeable that
which is not opposed to him, but that which is equal or superior is hateful to him.
One is tempted to say that this is not a description of a lover, but rather of a spoiled child. You might know someone that can only be friends with people that he or she considers inferiors. Nonetheless, let it be clear that such is what most men, throughout history, have wanted out of women, an inferior that makes them feel better about themselves. The prior is the very reason why they
cannot help being jealous and will debar his beloved from the advantages of society which would make a man of him, and especially from that society which would have given him wisdom.
Again, this could easily be a discourse about the repression of women. Although, the whole is discussed as the repression of some men by other men. Yes, men that wish powerless men to allegedly love. Great scorn is thrown at men with such desires. It is described how the loved, often a younger and poorer male, suffers by it as he has to mate with an older, disgusting man. It is said that eventually the lover's love ceases and then the pursuit changes. Yes, alas, the loved often feels he cannot do without the one who used to love him and thus chases him as the lover replaces him for another. Again, this should have been written about how most men treat most women. Let me quote of the young loved.
Not knowing that he ought never from the first to have accepted a demented lover instead of a sensible non-lover. Know that in the friendship of the lover there is no real kindness. He has an appetite and wants to feed upon you. As wolves love lambs, so lovers love their loves.
The latter sounds like a ready-made aphorism. Surely the whole is a lesson that all people should be taught. The philosopher then wishes to depart, but he is stopped by one of his familiar signs, a sign from the demon. Never mind the details about it. When conversation resumes, Socrates expresses the opposite point of view. He argues that the prior opinions are an affront to divinity. Remember that to the Greeks love, Aphrodite, and her son, sexual desire, Eros, were gods. Meaning, they cannot be bad. The point is that as the love of the lover is a kind of madness, not all madness is bad. Yes, some madness is divine. Socrates then attempts to define what is the soul. I guess this could be said to be the third topic of the dialogue, the one that most approaches a discussion on free will. It is said that the soul of man is self-moving, that it is free. Therefore, it has no beginning and it is imperishable. How the latter two follows from the former? In no real way, lol.
The body which is moved from without is soulless, but that which is moved from within has a soul.
It is curious that Plato does not notice love as exactly a movement from without. It is the most readily noticeable and apparent movement from without. Subsequently, there is a whole tale, a myth or fable. You know how Plato ever wished to invent a religion? LOL. Don't worry, 2,000 years ago some Pythagoreans invented one. In the present this myth there is the analogy of the soul as being a chariot driven by two horses. One of the horses is divine, reason, and the other is earthy, the body and its passions. It is a bit of a self-praise, skipping ahead over many details. The philosopher has the best chariot. Yes, by him the deformed earthy horse is thoroughly mastered. The artist or poet is on part with the philosopher, which is curious, as in other occasions the latter are demeaned. There is a whole ranking. Merely let me say that the last, the 8th rank, are the sophists and demagogues. Also, these are Pegasus, they are winged horses. There is a whole description of the Platonic realm.
There abides the very being with which true knowledge is concerned, the colorless, formless, intangible essence, visible only to mind, the pilot of the soul.
Oh yeah, souls reincarnate. People must choose which god they will imitate. This is in part like an Oriental religion. Returning to the topic of love, it is described why the soul grows as if addicted to another. This time, however, the lover is no one who will readily betray his love for another love. Rather, the love is as if eternal. After this most beautiful and artistic oration, the topic turns to rhetoric. Merely let me note how it is said that it is good to recapitulate all that has been said at the end of saying it. Also, that Pericles is to be considered as the best orator ever. Yes, thanks to his study under Anaxagoras. There is an analogy of rhetoric to medicine. in the sense that it must be correctly, morally, applied to curing souls and motivating virtue. Then yet another religious tale is given. It takes place in Egypt. Here a deity reveals that writing is in fact hampering to humanity. This is the idea of Pythagoras. Writing stuns the memory and makes it possible for an unworthy to learn. Writing, therefore, should be but a mere amusement, a game. Meaning, the only proper way of teaching is by way of verbal speaking. Writing is at best an aid to the verbal word, but never something that will match or replace it. On this channel, you may learn about the writings of many other authors. Now, as usual, consider the following aphorisms I came up with as I read the text.
While the conceited believes himself good when others think highly of him, the fool believes himself smart when others tell him that he is.
Until they realize others are not like themselves, the wicked trust no one, and the virtuous doesn't suspect anyone.
Painful pleasures arise from the pain of desire, while the most pleasant pleasure is not desiring.
There are three kinds of love: the selfless devotion of a mother sheep to her lamb, the predatory desire of a wolf for its prey, and the innocent joy of a lamb frolicking in open pastures.
The spoiled heart delights in agreement and abhors dissent.
The only real inferiority is believing oneself inferior.
He that refuses to compete faces greater scorn than a loser that denies his defeat.
When love fades, regret surges, but when hate wanes, repentance awakens.